Welcome. I'm delighted today to be joined by Simon Gill, Executive Vice President of Procurement at what was Proxima, now Bain. Simon, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Andrew. Nice to see you.
Indeed, anytime. We often see each other at the big events. And of course, this year we were together at the World Procurement Congress in London in May. And that's why we're talking today, because we discovered that the subject of the future of the procurement skill set is something that we're both speaking to a lot of people in our networks about.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the one of the byproducts of the fact that we're entering this new digital age is I think everybody's curious about what it means for them, and that doesn't just mean what sort of tech should they start using. I often get asked that question. Where should I be starting? What should I be using, etc., etc. But I think more and more they're saying, well, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for my team? What sort of new skills do I need? The question keeps coming up and up and up, and I think if you look out into the market about a lot of the people who are making noise out there about these themes, well, it's people like me and people like software providers. But what I thought would be really interesting, as we discussed together over coffee at World Procurement Congress, is what are the people who are actually doing this finding? What are the lessons that have been learned by the people who are 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 1, 2 years ahead of perhaps some of the others?
Yeah, indeed, and I had similar thoughts myself, and I've been asked at other events by actual practitioners about what they should be focusing on for their careers, and then you've got leaders saying to me, "Well, what's everybody else doing?" Even some of the more mature elite functions that the sort that I think we can learn from are still interested to know what everybody else is doing, because it's still really a subject that's probably in its infancy. And you put together some really interesting questions, Simon. Just talk us through your thinking behind the structure of those questions, if you would do.
Yeah, I think because this sort of new wave of solutions, we hear a lot about how it's going to take lots of jobs or fundamentally change the way that we work. So with that in mind, I thought, let's not just sort of focus on the practitioner, although that's a large part of it. And I thought, let's try and take a sort of a more a wider approach that looks around procurement. So there's some questions that we've put around sort of the operating model of the future. This sort of specialist operating model 2.0, if you like. How's that going to change? And then what does it mean for a CPO? How does it change the CPO's mindset, the skills that a CPO might need if they have a more digital element to their workforce, if you like? What does it mean for practitioners? What does this digital garage lead or this sort of procurement excellence lead look like? What do these people look like? Where do we find them? How do they operate? And then finally, I think one of the super interesting angles about this is that we talk a lot about democratization, which is basically a POS way of saying self-service, or putting in tech that allows the stakeholder to do it themselves. So what skills and competencies do we need to push onto our stakeholders? How do we make sure that they understand what we're asking them to do, both from a technology perspective but also from a commercial perspective, so we understand, so that they're doing the right thing for the business, and we can sort of hand that off to them. I guess you're at the forefront of the recruiting market, Andrew. I guess what have you seen over the last 5, 6 years, or 5, 6 months even? Have you started to see a change?
Yeah, I think we are now, Simon, because I first spoke on this subject in 2018 at a software event where they asked me to talk about climbing the career ladder in an automated world. At that point in time, we were still really sort of speculating as to what those skills might look like. And at that point in time, I thought we'd have made more progress than we actually have at this point, but we are where we are. And still, as recently as 18 months ago, I still think people had other priorities, quite frankly, as procurement leaders, with all the challenges they face with inflation and such like. But I think really in this last couple of events, particularly Digital Procurement World in October of last year, World Procurement Congress May this year, even the Procurement Strategies Innovation event in London in February, a lot more discussion about that, and a lot more inquisitiveness from people about, okay, so what should I be doing as an individual? What should I be doing for my team if it's a fairly senior person? So I think that we have reached a point now whereby there's enough mature functions or maturing functions in the use of tech that there's a realization they've got to address the skills angle to drive that better adoption, better results, value, etc., etc. So I think in terms of what I'm getting asked for now, We're going to ask for people who are much more digitally literate, a certain type of mindset, a certain type of thinking that is required to embrace this change, required to embrace the ongoing learning as tech accelerates at a rate that sometimes the human brain can't necessarily keep pace with. So we're certainly seeing this come now into the thinking. So it's a mindset, a mentality, a growth mindset, if you will, but also that digital literacy, and then specific competencies in particular areas. It might be data, it might be risk, it might be contract management. But it's still in its infancy. I think we'll see some gathering momentum over the course of the rest of this year. And I'm particularly excited about next year, and I think there'll be more investment in both tech and the skills and capabilities that go alongside it.
Yeah, I think we're in a pioneers and settlers type scenario. You know, if you look back over history, the pioneers come in and tread the hard yards, don't they? And then the settlers reap the benefits. And without doubt, there's some pioneers out there, people who are well advanced on their digital programs. That doesn't mean that, you know, there's now not a fantastically exciting and long pathway in front of them. But I think some of those hard yards have been done around, you know, what to do first, what are some of the pitfalls, what are some of the skills that perhaps general practitioners don't have, or some of the skills that you can train into your general practitioner. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about, is having, you know, heard some of the conversations that we've had today is some of those sort of lessons learned, really, because, you know, we are you know, for those settlers or those companies that are about to come in and en masse now and build digital programs, you know, there's plenty of learnings that they can benefit from, even though, you know, the path ahead might be 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, with the advent of Gen AI, which of course everyone is talking about so much in the marketplace, and we're starting to hear more meaningful, value-based case studies that actually can give us, you know, a good understanding of what can be done with Gen AI. But if you think about the conversation I've had around that, you've got the ability to actually use, you know, Gen AI. So that's how you write the prompt, how you interrogate the data, understanding how and where it's all come from. Then there's the other skills that actually are going to become more important that you can't automate. And the classic one, of course, in procurement is stakeholder relationship management. You know, you can't automate that. So, you know, that's been an absolute constant throughout both of our careers. And I think people are going to double down on that more. You know, similarly, critical thinking. In fact, you know, especially critical thinking, because then you're getting information from the tech, and you've got to really evaluate, you know, the extent to which you trust it and how you're going to use it. And so, yeah, these are the sorts of conversations that we're sort of having in the market. And it's quite interesting, the software companies, you know, recognise as an issue. There's no doubt a lot of software companies that we both know well, particularly some of my customers, some of the alliances and networking that you do. I think that they've got a vested interest in the procurement profession really sort of raising the bar in terms of their capability, haven't they, to drive better adoption? Is that what the conversations you're having with some of your software contacts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so, and I think I mean, just to revert to your point on Gen AI, I think it's fantastically exciting as to what it can do. But I think, you know, sometimes we can overlook that, you know, there's a wider set of artificial intelligence or tools or ways that you can use artificial intelligence. And I sense that right now on Gen AI, we are merrily walking through that hype cycle that we know and love for sort of tech adoption. And I think it'll probably do more than we think eventually. It'll probably take a little bit longer than we think to get some of the absolutely sort of slam dunk applications down. But a lot of tech that's out there really could be vastly improved and better adopted if it just had a better UX and perhaps better workflows, and, you know, was more aligned to problems. So I think the interesting thing about architecting a digital program, you know, there's this sort of architect role that I think is creeping into many functions now, is that ability to identify processes, spot problems, and sort of fit in solutions without getting too excited about what's possible, and sort of focusing on what's practical, or one eye on each, if you like. But those core skills, you know, I remember, well, several years ago when I was sort of learning my craft or learning the trade, you had your technical skills, and then even at that time we were talking about, you know, what's going to make you great rather than good is going to be your ability to build relationships, to inspire trust, to look at problems through different angles, and ultimately work with people to make positive change happen. I don't think that's changed.
Yeah, I think that, in our discussions that we've had with procurement leaders so far for this research, I think we've found that there's definitely, that emphasis on existing skills, in some cases becoming more important or even ever more valuable. There's some new skills. There's a lot around the mindset and mentality. And then you've got, as you touched on, the operating model and how that's going to change, whether you might bring some very specific skills in around it or data, for example, engineering, architecture that you've touched on. So there's a lot.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's spot on. Is actually the technical skills, or some of those technical skills, is perhaps where we might see some of the biggest change in the short term. Those architects, those engineers, and then of course it's what we do with it.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's clear for those that are watching, particularly procurement leaders, we'd love to hear from you to get involved in this research. We've already spoken to some great and well-respected leaders, and also some people in these specialist digital roles. We're building what we think is going to be quite a useful body of evidence, and all those who take part will benefit from getting the report first to see what or everyone else is sharing anonymously, of course. But we'll see what the great and the good of the procurement profession are predicting about this future skill set. I think it's going to be a really interesting piece of research which people will want to get their hands on when we're done later on this year. So I think we're hoping to publish around September, aren't we? So if people have got time, we'd love to talk to you about your vision for what you think skills are for you personally, for your teams, for around transformation, etc. So you can get in touch with myself and Simon both by LinkedIn. Simon, your email address at Proxima?
It's simon.geale, that's Geale, at proximagroup.com.
And of course, you can get me at andrew@everyday.com. You've heard it all before, I'm sure, my regular watchers. So is there anything we've not touched on at all, Simon, you think that we're remiss for us to miss before we wrap this one up?
No, I think it's a really exciting piece of research. I think we're about to, uncover some real gems from people who are leading the way, or just starting out, or getting knee deep into their digital operating models. And I'm really excited.
Yeah. Okay. So the message is take part and get the results, and you can get one step ahead of the competition in terms of how you do this very, very important subject. Simon, thank you. Thanks for the collaboration on the research.
Thank you.
And of course, we'll be updating our audience once we've got it finished. Thank you.